Thank you, Bill. Not Speaker, they told me that you need to leave about 3 o'clock. Let me make a few general statements in 15 minutes, and then those of you who can stay, we're going to still, I'm sure, be talking about this after 3 o'clock in the operation and the procedures of the House designed to rectify or correct these past abuses, this building up.
No, not as presently constituted, because the reserve officers were set up to be a supplement in certain types of activities within police work. They receive much less training than I would favor before arming someone. They're not full-time involved in this kind of work so that they have advantage of roll call training, counseling with all sorts of the day-to-day, minute-by-minute problems that do crop up.
Yes, I talked to him on the phone right after.
You doing all right? Yes, sir. How are you doing?
Well, I think we feel very good, about this situation. The court certainly took notice of the fact that this was a serious proposition, that there were several implications in this matter due to the time of the evening that it was and what was going on. And I think she recognized the problems that existed at that time. And of course, we're very grateful for this decision.
Be honest with you, I didn't really know what to expect. It is quite an involved situation of getting legislation into the hopper, so to speak, and then following it through. Like Betty said, it's been very informative, and I certainly do appreciate the hard work that's obviously gone into trying to make this easier for us.
Have you had to change your opinion of anything?
I don't think so. I tried to be very realistic in my campaign and in my goals, and I know that you have to work with all of the other representatives and senators, and that the bureaucracy in Austin will help everybody. Now, we have gotten far more detail on how to introduce bills and the technical aspects of being a representative or a senator, and I feel that no, I think I knew from the word go it wasn't going to be easy, and all I want to do is try to be pretty good at it.
What about are you encouraged or discouraged about your abilities now to do the things that you felt like you wanted to do when you ran for this office? In other words, when you say, well, I want to do this or that or the other in a campaign, now you think you're going to be able to do that, or are you any discouraged by the fact that the machinery is more involved?
I would say I'm encouraged for this reason. Most of us, I'm sure that Bill did too, run on a reform program. And it's perfectly obvious that the voters did get the message to Austin, first in May and again in November. And we're not telling them that we're down here to reform. We're finding that the people who've been here are telling us, remember, you campaigned on a reform program, and these are the reforms that we think you'll be interested in. I'm proud of the Senate in their special session. They did adopt improved or reform rules for use in the Senate. And I feel that in that sense, the Senate probably has made greater advances than the House.
Are you encouraged, Bill?
I'm encouraged. I called a freshman caucus. I don't know if you were aware of it or not, but sent out a letter to all the freshman representatives, and we are going to have that meeting tomorrow afternoon. And I've been encouraged because Speaker elect, I think, Price Daniel Jr. has certainly been cooperative, and he's indicated that he is going to fill in the freshmen and is going to allow us to have a voice in this matter of rules reform, which is of vital importance, I think.
Does it scare you when you see what really is involved, and then you think about the fact that there may be 4,000 pieces of legislation for you to deal with in a 5 or 6 month period of time next year?
Yes, of course. It almost overwhelms you, the amount of work that's going to face us.
Do you have a little more sympathy now for those who have already been here than you had before you came?
I'd have to say yes to that.
Okay, we have just a minute left. Do you have a pet project that you come down here specifically to try to get carried out?
I'm interested in one concept that Texas has not adopted, and that is a sort of general accounting office within the state government, a type of audit of our expenditures in different departments and different areas to be sure that the money appropriated is spent properly, but additionally is spent efficiently. If I'm anything, I'm interested in efficiency, not a cheap government, but an efficient government.
Bill, you got a pet project?
Rosser, I guess because I do represent one of the growing fewer rural districts, that I want to maintain a voice for the rural community in Texas. In our legislature, it's swung the other way a great deal, and most of the districts are, seems to me, controlled by urban areas, and my district isn't. I'd like to try to maintain a rural voice down here to some extent.
Agriculture, you mean, for the benefit of agriculture? Orientation for the 63rd session of the Texas Legislature has been going on here at the Capitol, and we wanted to talk with a couple of the freshman legislators about what they've learned, or whether they think things are different now than they thought it would be before they came to Austin. Sitting next to me is Betty Andujar, who is a new state senator from Fort Worth, and also we have Bill Sullivan, who is a state representative from Gainesville. What are your first impressions on being here in the Capitol and finding out what's going on, or what little you've been able to find out so far?
My impressions are of great cooperation on the part of all of the employees of the state capitol. I think that both the House of Representatives and the Senate officers have been extremely kind and thoughtful and made excellent preparation for this course. It was more necessary than ever because of the large numbers of new senators and members, and I feel that they certainly have executed this program very knowledgeably.
Mr. Sullivan, does that express your feelings?
I think so, Rosser. They've thrown an awful lot of information at us in a pretty short time. I don't know how much of it I've really picked up. I do have a little better notion now about what's going on than I did before I got here. Certainly wouldn't say that I feel competent to go through introduction of a bill and carrying it all the way through without a great deal more study.
Okay, that's what I was going to ask you next. Now, has your mind been changed any from what you thought before you came here, now that you've been here and had an opportunity to see what actually goes on, particularly?
Yes, my district is made up of some small industry, but predominantly agricultural, farming, ranching. And
do you think you're in a minority in this coming session?
It looks to me like that we are, and there are some important things, of course, that we'll be interested in. The farm to market program is farm to market road program is one area that we'll be interested in.
You may get some help from that from the incoming governor who originated that program. We've been talking with Bill Sullivan of Gainesville, a new state representative, and Betty Andujar, a new state senator from Fort Worth. Thank you all very much. Jerry?
Individuals is to be elected may gives most notice for his witness to you as one Texan to another.
Okay. Beyond that, in some instances, you have that in Congress, which is a land.
Anything about anything like that?
Well, I think this federal bill is going through.
Well, it's loose sand. It's been excavated in here. Once we're laying between a gas line and a sewer line, and we're fixing to go into a manhole, and there's so many pipes in here, I had to take my sandbox out. And so he didn't get out in time. We hollered at him, but he couldn't get out in time. It didn't cover up his head, but it covered up his body.
In spite of the chilly weather outside, things warmed up inside the state capitol building today as incoming Speaker of the House Price Daniel Jr. unveiled his ethics reform plans. In addressing the Legislative Council's orientation session, Daniel listed 9 bills he's preparing for pre-filing that would go a long ways to try to clean up state government operations. He said that the people expect this legislature to finally do that. And he wants them in statute form because he says House and Senate rules are only good from one session to the next. In an interview, the new Speaker gave me a summary of his proposals.
6 of the statutes are designed to put more openness into our state government, to allow the people of the state of Texas and to know what is going on in their state government. These statutes include such things as an ethics code, better disclosure of lobbyist activities up here, better disclosure of campaign contributions, and such as that. But the people of Texas can feel that they know what is transpiring, what is going on in their state government. The other category of statutes, 3 of them, pertain to preventing the concentration of power in the Speaker's hands, or in a few hands in the House of Representatives, generally made up of independent thinkers.
Daniel says that some legislators who carried over from the Mutcher team have joined him in the reform effort. For example, Jim Nugent says he'll carry the ethics bill this year, although he generally is credited with having gutted an ethics bill from the Senate last year. Some observers are leery of trusting these reformed reformers, but Daniel insists they should be given a chance, and he says regardless of what they do, the job will get done. This is Roger McDonald, Channel 8 News on the Move in Austin.
Dallas City Fathers now have what's called extraterritorial jurisdiction for 5 miles outside the city limits. What planners are trying to combat is substandard developments going up just outside those limits. A resolution before the Texas Municipal League would extend the 5 miles, and it comes out pretty strongly against a state land usage agency. Dallas City Attorney Alex Bickley is on the TML subcommittee studying the resolution. He says if it can become law, local government will have more land use control.
By that I mean control over subdivisions, over plats, over buildings and building codes and health problems and this sort of thing.
There must be a lot of objection on the parts of developers to having control over them when they're not actually in a city limits.
Oh, there are some, yes. And particularly those who are putting in little independent water systems and other such things as this.
Would this affect, or would it contravene the Land Use Act that's before Congress now?
Well, I wouldn't say it would contravene it. I would hope that it would fit into it, but there is some concern about it because the Land Use Act anticipates, apparently, that there will be more control at the state level than we would hope for.
The resolution originally gave land use authority to councils of governments, too, but it was amended in yesterday's TML meeting to include only cities and counties. Local officials don't want anybody telling them how to zone city land. Phil Reynolds, Channel 8 News on the Move in downtown Dallas.
During the fall that we were de-emphasizing, none of the people that I'm associated with, which is Athletic Council and the administration, know anything about any de-emphasis. We did not cut scholarships, as the papers have stated.
nor have we had a decrease in the amount of budget. We are committed, as the administration has gone on record to say many times, to a major program, and this is what we're going to pursue, a major program in football.
Governor, Bill Reynolds, Channel 8. You have a minute to talk to us before you book them on downtown? Let's why don't we move right over here and get out of the wind a little bit.
Did you have a nice flight?
Yeah.
Bill, how you doing?
All right, I think.
Well, you personally, do you have any special legislation you'd like to see go through the legislature?
I guess we'll just go right over here.
What is your first name? Linda. I mean, I'm not interested in getting Linda part of the way out of the assault. And tell me what happened. Knocking that time all the way down to 5 to 10 seconds. In other words, if you were to willingly respond as opposed to struggling, what in effect would you be doing? Following, exactly. What is your name? Before a man is able to penetrate a woman, he must become erect. Before he becomes erect, he must become sexually enticed. A more discreet way of saying that is that he prepares himself for sexual penetration. But you didn't want the more discreet way, did you? I heard about these TCU co-eds.
We don't have quite the intensity that most people are used to watching our defense play right now with, and therefore we're not doing the things that we did last year on the stretch drive. But I think that most of the players know they've got to do it, and so now it's time to get with it.
Has it been more than just a confidence thing?
Well, I think possibly confidence had something to do with it. I don't think they're overconfident. They played extremely well early against San Diego. They played very well against St. Louis early, and we got way ahead. Then we slipped back to maybe a little complacency and let them score on us. But I think they need to keep it up for 60 minutes, and we're going to try to do that.
Last week you said that you knew St. Louis would attack Charlie Waters, so you were giving him help. What about Harold Jackson and Charlie this week?
Well, we're going to probably help him too. Of course, we help everybody a little bit. We don't stand out there and leave them alone because Harold Jackson or Hawkins or any of the rest of their receivers are excellent receivers. But Jackson is the main one. He's caught over 50-some passes, leading the league, and so you have to help on a guy like that.
Philadelphia's only won 2 games so far, but you say they're really going to be tough. What scares you about them?
Well, the fact they won 2 and tied 1 the last 3. That makes a little difference. If they'd have won the first 2 games of the season and they lost all the rest, I wouldn't be so as concerned. But teams work on momentum. They have momentum going for them again. They did it last year on a great stretch drive, and they're going to try to do it again. And it's going to be a tough game for us.
Are you overlooking the subtleties of the system, though, whereby certain House members, lobbyists, and others who work in the back rooms have been successful so far in keeping this sort of thing from passing?
Well, as far as the legislators themselves go, I think that the people's mandate has been so loud and clear that it's gotten the message across to them, and that's part of the reason for my optimism. As far as
those who work in the back rooms are not going to be heard as much.
Oh, I think that the lobby will continue to try to throw stones in our way, but I just don't think they'll be able to do it.
This is Bill Hobby's first appearance in Dallas since the election's November 7th. As Lieutenant Governor, he will, of course, have considerable say-so about what happens when the 63rd Legislature convenes in Austin next January. In fact, he came here from Austin, where he'd been conferring with legislative leaders about what bills would be introduced during the regular session. I caught the Lieutenant Governor-elect at Redbird Airport when he arrived, and I asked him if he had any special legislation he was particularly interested in.
Well, I'd very much like to see the dates of the primaries changed to later in the year. Bills will be introduced. I personally would like to see the primaries in September and October, just before the general election in November. That some change in dates will, of course, be made necessary by the Constitutional Convention meeting from January until May of '74.
Y'all have as much turnout as expected or more?
Well, there's more, I believe. No, not right now, I don't think.
Okay. Thank you, Charles.
To see you.
His trail took him, among other places, to the Air Force Academy, where he studied karate, jiu-jitsu, and judo, earning a black belt in karate. Then to North Carolina State University, where he taught self-defense karate, and now to a lecture tour. In the past 6 years, Taraska has lectured 2 million students at more than 300 colleges and universities across the country, and police and court records show that his lectures have prevented serious assault and saved lives in 273 documented cases.
This program tonight is going to be quite a bit different than you might expect. The lecture could easily be entitled Rape and Assault Myth versus Fact, because there's so many myths that a woman is taught to do to prevent assaults. For example, some people advocate that you use weapons, and it's difficult for me to refute that. I can definitely see that some weapons would work. Now, the ones I suggest are bazooka, flamethrower, you know. I mean, I can definitely see if I attempted to rape this young lady and she turned a flamethrower on me, it would turn me off. Or on, depending on how you looked at it. But mainly when somebody talks about using a weapon, they're talking about something like smaller, like a fingernail file, rat tail comb, something that a woman can carry where? In her purse. And what's the first thing she does upon being assaulted? Drop her purse. Or somebody tells you to struggle. Screaming and struggling both work approximately half of the time. Unfortunately, when they don't work, they use a kill or maim the girl. Struggling only sexually entices the man.
Taraska says women, and men for that matter, should study karate. But he says, I could advocate that all day. People just won't do it. So he says, be kind, and above all, be calm. Try to buy time. At best, you'll frustrate the attacker. You might have time for someone to walk by, and at worst, you've avoided the violence which screams and struggles tend to invite. Jerry Taft, Channel 8 News, reporting.
Pipe in the sandbox. Put up in this congested area where we're tying into each one of these manholes.
Want to make a report to your office?
Oh yes, oh yes, I'll make
The first issue discussed at a specially called afternoon public school board meeting today was what would happen if the entire Fort Worth School Board, frustrated by its plight, were to resign. While highly unlikely, it was obviously much on the minds of some board members today. Then came the citizens.
We can take this problem right straight on like it should have been taken many, many years ago. We can stand our ground. And we can tell the federal courts that we want to run our schools. I sat and listened, or I didn't listen to it. I read it so many times myself aloud this morning from 5:30 on that I have been boiling to think of the asinine editorial that the Star-Telegram put out and gave us two alternatives. We can either abide by it or we can either forget it. That's nonsense.
But the Supreme Court of the United States certainly should be commended in its decision and in its order. If busing is a means to implement, fine. If you have a better means to implement that order, I don't care. The end result is the most pertinent and important thing. And as I close, I would like to quote Martin Luther King, who said, "Until we learn to live together, we will die like fools." Thank you.
Board member Jim Harris said, quote, "I don't believe we have two opposing views in Fort Worth. Our only opposition is from outside sources." Board President, the Reverend John Leatherberry, said of NAACP Attorney Clifford Davis, he is controlled from New York. Only one voice spoke against that remark, a man previously known as El Asa during the United Front movement, now known as James Gaskin, Fort Worth citizen. Jerry Taft, Channel 8 News, reporting. Before I could ask intelligent questions about why Fort Worth Citran riders are seemingly always faced with a threatened loss of bus service, I felt there were two things I had to do. Obviously, the first was to find out how their situation compares with drivers in other major Texas cities. Here are some sample results. In San Antonio, drivers recently got a 5.5% salary boost, 3 new holidays for a total of 8 a year. They have retirement, sick leave, a credit union, and get paid $3.30 an hour. In Amarillo, the story's the same, except they have uniform allowance, jury duty pay, 3 days funeral leave, and $2.80 per hour. The second obvious thing I needed to do was get to know a Citran driver. McDonald refuses to say what offers have been made and has no firm date for the next bargaining session, but he says it will come soon. Jerry Taft, Channel 8 News, reporting.
District Attorney Larry Miller from Hunt County came over to see Dallas County District Attorney Henry Wade this morning. The subject of the call, which county will take on the murder case of 19-year-old Danny McCrary, accused in the murder of a young Mesquite couple last year. Miller told Wade that all signs indicate that Gene and Forrest Covey were killed in the same Quinlan barn in Hunt County where their mauled bodies were found last year. In that case, the two men agreed, McCrary will be charged and tried for the Covey murder in Hunt County. But Miller told me he's in no hurry to press charges against McCrary because McCrary's father and brother-in-law are still under investigation as the principals in the murder.
Well, I can say this, that certainly the investigation is continuing regarding the other members of this family. There are two other male members of the family still in California prisons, and we're still looking toward prosecution possibly of those persons.
Hunt County will have to wait in line to get McCrary's in-laws back to Texas. The Texas family is under investigation for at least 11 other murder cases around the country. As the Hunt County District Attorney said, Danny McCrary is safely tucked away in the Dallas County Jail, so they can take their time in charging him in the Covey murders. Martha McIntire, Channel 8 News on the Move at the Dallas County Courthouse.
What we're going to do, we have two items on the agenda. We want to thank you all for coming. We have two telegrams which we will have.
Yes, I've worked at all schools here in Fort Worth. I've tried to continue to keep peace, and I'm going to keep peace. Even to those here that don't want it, if their little white child come over there, I'm not going to look at the color of his skin. I'm going to look at the
Mr. Green, Jerry Taft. How are you?
Very green.
Good to see you. How long have you been driving buses in Fort Worth?
36 years.
What sort of a salary does a guy make doing this kind of thing?
Well, we make $2.26 an hour. We never have publicized it because we were a little bit ashamed of it.
We only have the money to do with, which comes from the fare boxes, and that amount of money which has been appropriated by the city council. And by the terms of the contract under which I work, I cannot commit any money other than that which is assured. That is to say, it would be a cruel hoax on the employees for me to say, we'll give you a big and generous amount of increase and then run out of money long before the end of the year. Live within the dollars that are available to us.
The drivers in Fort Worth are paid less than most drivers in other cities. Would you agree with the proposition?
Wait a minute, I'll draw that map for you here, and where you can't miss it. He may not can find it. Okay. Channel 8 will have it solved for you.
She's going to go over here and testify for us. That's Spoon's waiting for her right now.
Where this boy was, and that Plainview, wasn't that the other murder, whatever the name was?
No,
it was found, I think, in Dallas County.
It was out near Lake Hubbard.
Somewhere in Dallas. It wasn't.
Something to do with
Don't have to worry. This attorney over in Hunt County. Well, not me, the police are.
I feel certain that when the grand jury does convene in Hunt County, this case
I would have very few comments to make about this because I just got the petition this morning.
Plan accepted the meeting.
Chief Souter will meet with the reserve next, and its purpose since its creation has been to supplement law enforcement efforts in certain areas of, and at that time this matter will be discussed with them, Chief.